Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Interview with a Reader, and I'm here with Heather. Hey Heather!
Hello, everybody.
I'm super excited for you to be here. Been reading your books for a while, and as you know, I love your little haunted series, and I've got two with me, and I can't wait for the third one to get here. It is so freaking beautiful. Thank
I love
you, by the way. It looks so pretty.
it. It's so much pretty. The light in on cameras never quite catches the vibrant purple of this cover. When you get it in person, it's like, oh my god, yes, it's gorgeous.
If it's anything like the other two, it's almost like they glow, and I don't even understand how that happens because it is not actually glowing. It's just amazing.
Highly saturated color, I think. So,
Well, it was a good job, and I can't wait to see the next ones you come out with because I know the covers are just going to get better and better from here. So now that we have you here, I'm just going to ask you, of course, some regular things I'm sure you've answered a million times, but I always like asking them anyway. So here's an easy one. What made you want to be an author, a writer? What got you here to this point?
oh,
Nothing
been
too
asked that
big.
one a lot, but not in a while. So I always loved books. Like I was a huge reader, even growing up. I was one of the kids who I went to kindergarten and the teacher was trying to teach us to read, and I was just like, here, give me the book and I'll show you. So I love to read, and I always loved spooky stuff. Even as a kid, like reading picture books, when we would go to the library, I would go to the Halloween section, even if it was like April. And also love scary stories and scary movies. So I spent a lot of time with her and kind of inherited that from her as well. So I always loved books. Yeah, tales my grandmother told me. I've always loved books, reading, and then in 2020, when everybody was kind of on lockdown from COVID, I decided doing book reviews. So I started a Instagram account called Quaint and Curious Volumes, and I started doing reviews for mostly horror themed books. And after a couple of years of doing that, I really got to know kind of the indie writing book scene. And I was like, I'm gonna try my hand at this because I did well at writing assignments in school and little creative writing things and poetry and stuff. So I knew I kind of had that in me, and I thought I'm just gonna try and see what happens. So that was back before on the bad list, and so I started doing that in November of 2020. I actually started halfway through the month. I just got a wild hair to do it. And so I wrote from the middle of November to the middle of December and finished my first little novella book here, Knock Knock, which is um, modern gothic ghost story horror. And I put it out just to see if people would like it, and people did. So that just it gave me a boost, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do more of this. And then I did more of it, and here we are.
That's a pretty good path to go on. Did you ever stop and or ever have the thought, hey, I might want to try to write something different, like completely genre wise, or has this just been it and you've enjoyed it?
I knew when I started that I would write horror because they say write what you know. Well, not that I never in my own life I've never lived in a haunted house, but it's kind of books I knew the best, and so I knew that's where I wanted to start. Now, all I've done so far is horror. However, I am thinking lately of maybe getting into some things that are more themed than just horror. I don't think I'll ever stop doing horror completely, but I may do some things that are a little different now and then.
Ooh, that's exciting. I cannot wait to see if you do go down that road. It'll be
Why
interesting.
didn't you, Alexis? Why didn't you tell me I had food on my?
I didn't even see it. I'm blind. I have glasses.
Okay, so when I anxiety eat, like when I'm waiting for something like this to start, I was eating frosted mini wheats, but like dry, and I had a little bit of mini wheat on my lip right there, and I just noticed it.
Yeah, I was just
So,
like
sorry.
frantic eating tortilla chips before this, so totally get it. I waited to put my lipstick on until last so I could just wallpaper over it just in case. No.
Should have done that. Yep. Anyway,
quick.
back to books. Back to books.
Yes. So writing different genres. So I'm trying to remember where I even ran into you in the horror community. But what is it about the horror community that kind of keeps you going? Because not only are you an author, you're an editor, so you have to really want to be, or at least for me, have to really want to do this. It's not just you're doing it for the glamour.
I love bookish people in general from any genre. You have to love people who would kind of rather be at home with a book than out at a party. You know, that's the kind of person I am, and I can relate to that. And I like horror people. I think listen, there's been a lot of drama in the horror community, which I have not been
No.
any part of and don't want any part of. And I tend to not even give opinions on it because I'm just like that no. But aside from the drama, horror people tend to be just kindest, most like accepting people. And I love that you can look anyway, you can talk anyway, you can like any weird thing you want, and people are just like, all right, that's cool, you do you. And I love that about the horror community. And then of course I, I have to appreciate any who, be scared. That little weird adrenaline rush of something creepy, spooky, whatever. That's my people.
I mean, it makes sense. Whenever I'm talking to people and I meet them in non-horror bookish areas, I'm always like, "What do you like to read first before we go any further? I need to know what kind of direction." Because if you're a romance reader, we're probably going to have different options going forward. But it's easier when they're like, "Oh, I like horror." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So you like weird stuff too." It's
Uh,
just
instant. Uh, what word am I?
yes, yes. Even though there's so many different things in horror, you're all still there because we like to be scared, and to be scared, it's going to be weird. It's just fun. Um, and I think that makes little conventions and stuff easier for all of us to go to too. Because I know I'm pretty introverted, but if I'm going somewhere where I know everybody else is going to like my same interests, it's much easier. I think.
I'm also very introverted. In case you couldn't tell.
I like to hide it, and I'm sure a lot of people do because I see so many people in the horror community that are doing videos on camera, and you guys have to market your own stuff on top of that. So you got to kind of bite the bullet and just jump in front of the camera. So
It's easier for me to be like, oh, I'm so confident in front of a camera than in front of real people. So um, social media and the internet has actually been a diverts like me and you, I assume.
yes, oh, it has. It's much, much, much easier. Much easier.
Yeah.
Let's see. So going back to kind of about you and your writing, who or whom, multiple peoples, I don't know, do you think kind of shaped your writing and how you wanted to write? Like growing up reading as you got older, because I know it's like three different sections of going up and reading. You go through, hey, I'm getting older, I like this, and it all molds you to what you're doing now.
Yeah. I grew up on really old, like Victorian era horror. My grandma Nan had hundreds of the old like ghost story anthologies with all the different short stories. Um, so I mean, I read the complete stories of Poe when I was 12. Everybody talks about, oh, Goosebumps got me into it, and I'm like, I was like 11 when Goosebumps came out, and I was already past kind of the children's horror, so that was not a thing for me. When I was 14, my uncle, who loved horror as well, gave me he had gone through all his books, which he had hundreds, if not thousands. He had like duplicates of, and he gave me this huge box of books, and it was like Clive Barker and Brian Lumley and Anne Rice and just this jumble of different kind of horror. And I went through those like some of them were a little too much for me at that. Yeah, I love that. I think I'm highly influenced by the old Victorian Gothic horror style. But then I love Shirley Jackson. I love how she made everything very psychological in her stories and horror you in the face. It was all just
Yes.
kind of creepy and you didn't really quite know what was happening and that unknown aspect of it really adds to the creep factor. Um, I love Ray Bradbury's style because I think has the most style. Even when he's writing about horrific things, he does it in this very beautiful sort of language. So I love that. Um, Weirdly enough, not a huge Stephen King fan. Not that I dislike Stephen King. I was just never like, oh my God, I have to read everything out. So they're like, oh, I'm going to pull your horror card for that. And I'm like, I've read like 20 Stephen King books in my life out of the 100 and whatever he's published. I don't know.
That's still a lot of one author's books. It doesn't matter how many they already have.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's the thing. There's so many good authors. I book love around a little bit.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely the old school stuff. I'm a sucker for um, slow, creeping dread, atmospheric, gothic kind of stuff, and beautiful in describing horrific situations.
No, absolutely. The atmosphere that gets built, I think, is so important in a story. Like, I need to be creeped out while I'm reading it. Like, let it sneak up on me. It's the best. It's the best.
So when I first started writing, I had a piece of paper and it said the setting is a character. Guys, that is like the biggest thing in gothic horror is that the setting is a character in itself. You know, the old house, the old castle, the old hospital, hotel, whatever. Like the building itself and the atmosphere is its own character in those books, and that's what I always try to do when I'm writing is to make the setting its own character.
Yes, that's absolutely so important. Let's see. Okay, other than books, do you, and I know a lot of people aren't into TV and movies. I'm so behind, it's not even funny. However, do you like movies and TV horror wise? Past or present?
I am not a huge TV or movie person. I never have been. When I was a teenager, I begged my parents to let me have a TV in my room, and they finally gave me one, and they like hooked it. And after about 3 months, I was like, "Can you take this out?" Because I find myself just like vegging out in front of it and not doing anything productive, and I didn't like that feeling in myself. So I find it very hard to just sit like an hour or 2 hours. My brain is constantly going, yeah, we could be doing this or we could be doing that. And
Yes.
it's weird because I can sit for 2 hours and read a book and my brain doesn't do that. It's like fully immersed, interactive in my brain kind of thing. But I don't I don't watch a lot of TV. Since Josh and I got married, he loves movies. Because I think his brain goes so constantly all the time. He needs that little bit of time to turn it off, and even then, he's not great at it because he's usually doing something else while he watches a movie. But he's always like he'll be. I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't seen that, and so it's kind of like a joke at this point that I haven't seen 90% of what most people think everybody has seen. I do like horror movies when I want to sit down and watch stuff. There's been some horror shows over the years, but I have to like watch half an episode at a time and then go do something else. Like I really loved Penny Dreadful when that came out. I loved Hemlock Grove. Um, and I do tend to like if I don't want it to be blood and guts and jump scares. I want my horror movies to be the same kind of horror that I like in my books, the slow creeping dread stuff. Like Mike Flanagan's series that he's done for Netflix, I love those.
Oh,
Yes. I did have to watch some of those half an episode at a time and still love. He's got that atmosphere thing down and I really appreciate that.
he really, really does. Like, I every time I sit down to watch something, I know it's going to be good, but I'm still just shocked that it's that good.
Yeah, like if somebody were to say to me, "Hey, would you ever like one of your books made into a movie?" I'd be like, "If Mike Flanagan directs it, sure." You know?
Absolutely.
I feel
And
like
it's
he would do it the way I would want it done. So yeah.
and absolutely on the TV thing. I swear I used to watch horror movies, horror TV, the whole thing, and now I'm like, okay, I can commit to 800 pages of a book, but I cannot commit to an hour and a half movie. It just can't do it.
Life that I feel like I could be better spending my time doing anything else. Like it's kind of a joke now that I hate having to take showers. Not that I don't take
It's a
showers.
waste of time.
Like
No.
you have to take a shower every day, but I'm like, oh my god, I gotta take a shower and wash my hair and dry my hair and blah blah blah, and I'm for the day and just get on with it. I hate all those little things that like get
We
in the
need
way
human
of
car washes.
things. Yes, yes, absolutely. That's what I need. Good
Somebody write a
idea.
horror book about that, but also,
With that, make that happen.
oh my goodness, that's so funny. Let's see. Do you have any kind of horror related hobbies?
Know that I have horror related hobbies, although I do, when I get in a really domestic mood, make quilts, and I have made some that are kind of horror themed with like skulls and things.
I have seen your quilts. They're so
Um,
beautiful.
a sketched out quilt design that I will make someday when I have the time, that's all like skins and leaves and black cats and like Halloween stuff. But my and I do like to bake. So when it's Halloween themed, I like to make Halloween at Scares That Care in St. Louis. Probably a year ago. It's been a little over a year. I took cookies up there, and some of them were Halloween themed cookies with decorations and stuff. And I took 3 giant baker's boxes with like 5 dozen cookies each by the end of the weekend. So not
Ooh,
really horror
yeah.
themed hobbies, but hobbies that I can do horror themed things with, I guess you could say.
I mean, that's fine too. Those are very good horror themed hobbies to have, or ones that you can make horror themed.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I probably already know the answer to this when I'm asking anyway. Are you a planner or a plotter when it comes to writing?
Wait a minute. You mean a planner or a pantser?
Yes, sorry. Planner or pantser?
Let me ask you, which one do you think I am?
I want to say you're a planner, but I feel like you're going to tell me you just absolutely wing it.
I absolutely wing it.
Yes.
I generally know where a story is going to end and roughly how it's going to start, and how we get from one point to the other is just whatever's in my head that day. I have never, the closest I've ever come to really planning or plotting a book is I did like a brainstorm session and jotted down different things on like index cards. So I could kind of, I went through it and go, okay, well now I know I want this to happen. So I'm going to use this card, what's on this card, and write it right now. But it's certainly not in any way that is like nailed down, has to be this way, planning, plotting. I don't have charts like that when I'm writing. Now, when I'm editing, I'm super organized when we're doing the anthologies. But when it's my own writing, I'm just like, yeah, whatever I feel like today.
That's so funny. That's kind of what I was thinking too. It seems like you would be a plotter, but I'm like, I just feel like there's some chaos in there.
It does seem like I would be a plotter because most everything, and people have begun to notice it. Whoa, and
Haunted.
laugh at me about it. Ooh, ghost. So yeah, I'm a very generally meticulous, do things a certain way every time kind of person. So you would think that I would be a very organized planner when I'm writing. I'm just, maybe it's my one part of my life where I'm just like, I'm going to be chaotic, you know?
You gotta have one. You gotta have one.
That's
And it
it.
works, so that's all that matters. So,
Yep,
kind of going with
agreed.
that, where do you think your inspiration comes from? Is it just something that you're thinking about and then you jot down, or you see something, you're walking along? What kind of inspirational situation do
It
you have?
is it is absolutely just random random stuff. Like running notepad thing on my phone where I'll think of something or I'll hear a story on. I do a lot of, well, what if this story had taken this turn, like real life stories, things that have happened. Like, well, what if it took this turn at this point, and then where would that go? Or I'll see. Um, I have a whole list of places that I have seen, and I'm like, you could totally make a story about that. We passed someplace. I don't even know where it was. It could have been when we were out in New England, and it was called Superstition Hill. And I was like, oh my God, that's a good book title, right? Like what would be happening at
I would buy
Superstition
that.
Hill, right? So or one time I was out at the lake with, this was several years ago, and it has stuck in my head with my kids, and there was just this old, like, falling apart Victorian house up on the, like, you couldn't get to it from the public part of the lake, but you could see it, you know, across the lake, just this crumbling Victorian peeling paint right on the edge of the lake. And I'm like, what's the story there? Like, what could be the story
Oh,
there? Or Home in the Rain. I lived in this little tiny town. There were these railroad tracks that like cut the town in half, basically, right across Main Street, and it was pouring rain. Like, couldn't see a foot in front of your car, loud rain and thunder and stuff. And just as they got to the railroad tracks, the thing came down, you know. But so loud from the rain that you couldn't hear, because, you know, usually it's like ding ding ding, but you couldn't hear it. And I just had this thought, what if you were in this storm and you got stuck right there on those railroad tracks, like, the, because you didn't, it was, the rain was so crazy, the noise was so crazy, you didn't know, and you got caught and the train hit you, and then what would happen after that? And that's actually, that a few
that's
years ago,
horrifying.
and that thought process has kind of morphed into a book that I'm very slowly writing right now, and have had to kind of put aside at the moment because it's very dark and I can only work on it little bits at a time because it puts me in a weird headspace. But it started from thinking about a woman being caught there, being hit by that train and seriously injured, but like she wakes up and things are weird. I don't say too
Ooh.
much about that because that goes into a book I'm actually writing. So
Yep, absolutely. And
yeah.
that sounds exciting. So I am excited for that. But that's one of those things that's horrifying to think about. I remember when I was younger, there used to be so many like little wives' tales and things about the railroad tracks, the things coming down. I don't even need it to be raining to be horrified about getting stuck between that and not hearing about it. So absolutely crazy. Um, let's see. Okay, since you and Ellen Datlow are my favorite editors for anthologies, I have a couple of questions.
I,
How
I'm,
do you
I'm
make them
glad
so good?
I'm glad to be put in the same sentence with Elmo any day. So thank you.
How? Like, and I have other anthologies. I read a ton of them, and they are good, of course. But there's just something about y'all's that I don't care what they're about. I will absolutely read them. They're just so well put together. They flow. I don't know. It's like magic.
I think there is an art to putting together anthologies, and in fact, I was on a panel one time where we talked about this. And this is funny, but you know, in my normal daytime life, I am a preschool teacher, and I compared putting an anthology together to planning a preschool lesson plan, because when you're planning a lesson plan, you kind of alternate very active times and very restful times, and like loud times and quiet times, and you do that with stories when you're as well. You want longer stories and shorter stories, and more intense stories and kind of more casual stories, more bloody stories, and more you know, spirit stories. And there's a balance to it because I've read so many anthologies myself. I know if I'm reading one and the stories in a row that are all very similar, I kind of get bored with it and I stop reading. So it's important to me to really keep the stories balanced and arranged in a way that the readers don't get bored with too much of the same thing. Because if you're putting together a bunch of separate stories, why not keep it, exciting and new and changing things up? You've got all these different authors with their different styles and things. You put that to use. You take advantage
I feel like it's so easy
of that.
to make one big long book hard for somebody to set down because, of course, you've got to stop. You got to find your stopping point. Is it a chapter? But when it comes to an anthology, it's so much easier just to set it down and go do something else. But when I find one where it's like, oh, do I want to set it down? Do I want to go do something else? No, make it hard. And I love that. And I feel like that not a lot of anthologies do that.
Oh, and the HOH anthologies are unique, in that they're all set in the same span of years. But even in that, I try to, like in hotel, you start at the beginning or at the top of the hotel and you're working your way down, right? So I feel like the reader can kind of sense that the further you get into the book, the darker the stories are getting, because
It
you're
is.
getting into the kind of, you start out with the very hoity-toity, like razzled up level, and then you're going down and you're down and you're getting into the seedier parts of things and the dark, underground levels and things like that, and you kind of trying to draw the reader to that
I was so invested
final place
before I
there.
realized I was invested. And then I'm like, oh, it's so late at night, but I can't stop reading this.
I know. I remember we sent you. You were the very first person we sent a copy to before it was even really finished, and you said you were going to start reading it as soon as you got home from work. And the next day, I was like, how are you liking it so far? And you were like finished with it, and I was like, are you serious? Like
Yeah.
that's like a 500-page book. You just read it all last night? Yeah, that's crazy. So thank you for that. I guess it means we did our jobs right.
I'm already excited for the next one, and I haven't even physically gotten the first one, which I'm very excited for.
On the way. I don't know what's going on with the United States mail system lately. That everything is so slow.
Absolutely nothing is what's going on because they ain't delivering.
Well, it's coming. That's all I can tell you.
Oh no, I'm excited. So that leads me
I can show it to you. Here's a look just like this, the limited edition. They're so pretty. I just love them.
How did you come up with the covers for them? Like, how did you get there? Because they literally are all so beautiful.
Okay, so there is kind of a story to that. When I first started thinking about these anthologies, which was, what is this year? Around the end of 22, I knew that if I did a series, I wanted all the covers to look similar enough that people could look at it and immediately know that's part of that series. There are some of that I have seen, and the one that sticks out the most in my head is, I can't remember which publisher it is that does it, but they have like a series of Christmas horror anthologies, and they're all the covers are like red and black and white and very stylized. And you can look at it and you're like, oh, that's totally. So I knew I wanted to do that. So I thought I want each book to have its own sort of primary color. And I talked with Christy Aldridge, who does covers, and the first one we worked quite a bit on the first one because I wanted it to be very like classy looking. A lot of horror today, especially indie horror, is very like blood gory in your face kind of images, and I didn't want that. I was like, we're going old school. This is a house. So I said I want basically just cover with a black silhouette, but I don't even know what to call it. She would know the word for it. Like these have, you can tell there's a building there, but it's
silhouette.
not.
It's kind of like a silhouette situation.
It's but that's not. And I said, because that'll be easy to replicate over and over with each book. We'll have a main color, and then the building. That book is about kind of in a black and gray, whatever on the front. And I chose the font that we use, which is actually called Road Race. The font that's on the covers of all these. I
That's
was like,
so
I
weird.
was like, that's what I want, because it looks kind of old and creepy without being like in your face, blood dripping from it, horror font. So we use covers, and yeah, I really wanted them to stand out as, once this series gets going, when you see one, that book belongs to that series.
Yeah, when I'm scrolling and I just see it, I'm just like, oh yes, it catches your eye. I know exactly what it is immediately.
I will say it's really cool. Like House of Haunts, we did the blue, and I can remember telling Christy, like, darker, darker, more saturated. Like you were saying, it's like they glow. I was like, I want more saturation. I want it to be like just soaked in that color. And the day that we laughed, Josh and I, we said it's like Facebook turned blue, because every other post I saw scrolling was a picture of that book, and it was just blue, blue, blue. And then when Hospital came out, it's like Facebook turned green because everybody was posting that one, and then it was purple this
So
year.
fun.
Next year it's gray, which is, I don't know, not as exciting of a color, but it goes. I'll be glad to see Facebook turn gray in October of next year.
I will be as well. I'm just so excited, and I know we have to wait an entire year, but it was definitely worth it for hotel, which I love hotel settings. So they're just so chaotic and scary to begin with, just normal. You're sleeping in a room that how many other people may or may not have died in?
Or whatever, and yeah.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, so hotel, concept of hotel. Josh and I sat down after we did house, and we came up with H words that we could use. House, hotel, next year's highway. So we came up with 13. And I knew I wanted to do Halloween of haunts, and holiday of haunts at the very end. So those will be the last two, Halloween, Christmas. But when we started this year, Josh and I had my notebook, and we were looking at stuff online, and we were like, where should we set this? Because house is set kind of, it never really says exactly where, but it's like the deep south, and hospital is like New England. And he said, let's do hotel on the west coast. Let's make it different. And Josh, San Francisco area. So he was like, they've got some really cool old buildings out there. Let's look at that. And we were looking, and we found Telegraph Hill, which is this. You have to understand, San Francisco was more or less created by earthquakes. So there's all these like weird hills and cliffs and stuff. And we found pictures of Telegraph Hill, which is cliff in the middle of these streets in San Francisco. And Coit Tower sits on top of it, this big tower. We were really cool. So then we started looking at real people who had been in San Francisco around the time we wanted to set it, and came up with the baking circle, which we read about because we read the book. And I said, well, I have to create one completely fake character of the baking circle, the one that does all the really bad stuff, and I don't want to base that on a real person. And then we, February this year, and went to the location where we set our fictional hotel and walked around, and we took videos and pictures, and we sent it to the authors who were working on their stories. And it's like there's a real building where our fiction, it's literally from the back of the building to that big tall cliff face is like, I don't know, 10 feet maybe. You just walk down this little dark alleyway between the building and this cliff that rises up with this tower on top of it. And I'm like, this is definitely the place where some creepy things could happen. Some deadly things right up against this cliff that they call Telegraph Hill. So yeah, hotel is really cool. It was nice to set it in a real place and to be able to tell our authors about the area or could use to kind of ground their stories in. And San Francisco has a fairly sordid past on its own, so that really added to it as well. So Josh and I picked that. Josh inspired it, being from San Francisco, and then we really worked on the setting and the history together on that one, and gave it to the authors, and they ran.
That's going to be so fun. I just can't wait. What other kind of projects do you have coming up? If you can talk about them, of course, or want to.
Yeah, well, first of all, Water Tower Hill Publishing, we have 12 books coming out next year, various. The first one we have in January, actually, toward the end of January, is a horror novel by Ginny Topin called The Blurry Man. It's kind of a guy who had a traumatic experience as a child, and it him into much of that away. But as for me personally, I'm working on an anthology called Spook Hollow, Tales of Ozark Horror, because I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is not really the Ozarks, but very close to it. So we vacationed in Missouri and Arkansas a lot, in the Ozarks, and the Ozark Mountains lend themselves very well to kind of a creepy, mystical, folk magic.
Anything can happen kind of
feeling. If you go there, especially in the autumn, I mean, picture the autumn foliage stuff and the so thick out of the valleys and stuff. It's a very, I don't know, ethereal kind of place. And there's a lot of folklore and stories to it. A lot of the people who settled there were of Irish and Scottish descent, so they brought their own stories with them, and it all kind of melded into this new culture. So I really wanted to. I feel like the Appalachians and Rockies, and they're like more well-known mountain ranges. And I feel like the Ozarks, nobody really knows unless they live. So I wanted to kind of give them their day in the sun. And so we ended up getting so many good submissions that I couldn't choose the ones for one volume. So we're going to do 2 volumes with 13 stories in each, one in February and one in August, beginning of September. And I just sent the contract out for those, and we got some great stories for those. As soon as all the contracts are signed, we're gonna release the lineup and the cover. Josh and I, mostly Josh, has been working with Christy on the cover for the last couple of weeks. And I can give you a very general idea usually of what I want, but when it comes to the specifics and the technicalities and stuff, I'm like, I don't know. So Josh takes care of that for me because he's way better and tells Christy or other author kind of what to do, and then they make his vision a reality. Releasing that very soon. And then, of course, working on the next HOH already, which is Highway of Haunts. And I'm sure you've seen the lineup because we already posted it, and it's a lot of pretty big names in the indie horror world. So I'm very excited about that. We did tell them the first 3 HOHs we've tried to make a lot more old school. We said not a lot of blood and guts, but this time I said, Josh, I think a highway of
it's bloody.
Highways makes me think of killer, like murder and stuff like that more than ghosts. So I said a little more violent and bloody kind of stuff. So we recruited authors who are good at that kind of story. And some who are a little kind of soft core, so we can balance it out. And we said, here's our Phantom Highway, which follows the real Highway 50, which was also Josh's idea. He said, hey, there's a highway called Highway 50, and there's a section of it called the Lonely Road or something that goes through Utah or New Mexico, somewhere where. So we kind of looked at the map of that, and it was perfect. And so we have the Phantom Highway, which follows that highway, but it's like, I don't want to give too much away, but it's like you're on the real highway, and then wrong turn or
Gotta watch
somebody
them
falls asleep at
exits.
the wheel, and then you find yourself on the Phantom Highway, which is kind of Highway 50 in an alternate dimension, where all the horrors that have happened along the highway are still around.
Ooh.
So that comes out in August. And I'm very slowly on At the Corner of Gray and Gone, which is my book, inspired by the thought of being stuck on the railroad tracks in the rain. I don't want to say inspired by that. The very beginning of the book is inspired by that, and then it goes on. But I don't know when that's going to be finished. I feel like it may be a long time. I'm just starting to make notes and outline for a Halloween project of my own. It's just me. It's not an anthology. It's called Haunted Hours, and it takes place in a small town over Halloween night, and each chapter is an hour of the day. In the early afternoon, because we start out with kids at school having a Halloween party, and it's like scary, but it's also very nostalgic. On Halloween, that I think at Halloween everybody, even the horror lovers who love really extreme, that kind of yearning for that old school feeling as kids at Halloween.
I mean, it makes sense because all year we're reading horror. So what do we do in Halloween time to make it different?
I know that when it's Halloween, I want more than like abject horror. So I mean, it's definitely going to have some scary parts, but it covers the whole town on Halloween night, and then everything kind of comes together at the end. So that's kind of my happy time project. I don't want really, really psychologically dark project. And then, of course, I'm always editing for other people, and when we're doing lots of stuff at Water Tower Hill, Josh has his next book coming out next month. So if you guys like modern fantasy, you need to check out old Joshua Lloyd Fox, who's being very quiet. I do.
Oh my goodness. You guys have so much cool stuff going on with your stuff and Water Tower. It's so cool. And I see how much you're doing for other people and their books as well for Water Tower. You're not just being like, okay, we're going to publish it. You're actually helping them out, getting it out there, sharing the whole thing. And I love that.
One of Josh's main things when he started the company was that it would be an author-centric publishing company, and that we want our authors to succeed. We want them to, he says he likes to make other people's dreams come true, and try to make it like a family, that all the authors we're a family together, and we work together, and we support each other, we promote each other's books. That's all Josh. That's his. I help with Water Tower Hill, but it's his baby, and it's good about it comes from him.
You guys are great, and he's great. I see him all the time out there sharing again, doing all this good stuff. He works hard on those covers because I could never, honestly. Like, I love the covers, and when I see a good cover, I'm like, that's amazing. But for me to actually get to that point, I'm just like, how? How do you even tell somebody? I couldn't even, like, Savannah did my logo, not this one, but my other one for Scarlet and Lonely Reads, and I'm like, I'm so sorry that I have no idea how to tell you what I want. So I can't even do that.
I can look at something and go, no, that's not right, but I can't tell you what exactly needs to happen to it to make it right. And Josh is like, oh, change this, move this over here, make this brighter, make this bigger, like what? And I'm like, and then it ends up being exactly the perfect thing. But I'm like, I don't know how you got.
No, me neither. It's amazing to me. Anybody that's artistic.
In fact, let me tell you, when we are doing cover design for any of the Water Tower Hill books, we get on a Teams meeting with Susan Roddy, who does most of our covers. Christy does my horror ones for me, because Christy and I have a long-standing system between us from before I even knew Josh. For most of them, Susan does our covers, and we get on a Teams meeting, and it stresses me out. Sometimes I have to like get up and walk away, because he'll be like, now try this, now try that. And if it doesn't look good, then I'm like, oh God, this is good. This is going to be terrible. And then it's not. In the end, it's perfect. in between saying, handle this stress. I gotta go
Like
somewhere else.
it took me like a long time to even get up like the courage to email her, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a terrible client. I don't know what I'm doing. So like help you figure this out.
Yeah.
But no, it's absolutely amazing. Okay, let's see. I think the last thing I'm gonna ask you is a fun kind of question. What do you think your top 3 favorite books of all time in your whole life were, and then your top 3 reads this year? And they can be the same, I guess, technically.
The first one's gonna be most of what I read recently is stories that are submissions. So I can't talk about a lot of them. Or books that I'm editing. So let me tell you, my top 3 books ever. Easily, always Shirley Jackson. My favorite book of all time is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, because it's so beautiful. That and his The Halloween Tree, they capture that childhood innocence, coming of age, but spooky stuff going on. I just love it. Now I would have, because I always give those 2. I'd have to think for a second about the third one. I don't like just horror. So like I love,
It can be anything. I'm not limited you to horror for these.
like I don't know, this is my favorite of all time, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I just got a review copy of George Saunders' new book. But George Saunders wrote a book called Lincoln in the Bardo. And I saw it forever, and I just kind of ignored it. And then when I finally read it, I was like, I can't believe I waited this long to read this book, because it's Abraham Lincoln when his son died, his little, young son, and it takes actual historical excerpts from like newspapers and articles and things, and kind of intersperses them with this fictional. His son ghost is in the cemetery, in a mausoleum, and there's all these ghosts there, and he's meets all these different ghosts of different people, and then there's like this presence that comes into the cemetery every once in a while and takes when they're ready, but they don't know if it's to a good place or a bad place. And then it has the parts where it's Lincoln going into this mausoleum to like mourn his son, and those are like break your heart, tragic kind of things. And it's just a really unique way of doing a book, because you've got that historical stuff, Lincoln himself, and then you got to part with his little boy ghost. And it's just it made me cry, and then but then you're also like you're scared of whatever this force is that keeps coming into the cemetery to take the ghosts, and
okay, I might actually have to check that out because
it's fantastic. And then I don't even know what I've read in the last year. I can tell you, I'm editing right now a book for Christy Aldridge. She does my covers and I do her editing, and it's a book of hers I've read before, so it's not from this year. It's really, really good. It's called These Ghosts Bleed. It is the story of a man whose dead wife's ghost gets really horrific vengeance upon him, because he was not a nice man in life. First of all, even after she dies, he finds a way to profit off of her work. I don't want to give too much away from it, but her ghost comes back and does horrible things. But it's
good for her.
So good. I'm trying to think of what else I've read this year. Well, first of all, I'm going to give a plug to my husband over here, because he has his series, The Archangel Missions, which are urban modern fantasy. I always say my funny tagline I like to give them is, these ain't your grandma's angels. They're warrior angels who don't always do what their boss tells them to, and they meddle in the lives of humans, and they're actually preparing for a rather large scale war of biblical proportions, if you will. But they Also, people see the Archangel missions and they think that they're like religious books, and they're not.
They are not. I
There's
have read them and do enjoy them.
there's some cussing and some sex and some lots of violence and murder, and just sometimes the angels are quite tricksy, and humans doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. Anyway, that is a great series, and the sixth one comes out next month.
The cover updates that y'all did, or he did for those, they pop too.
Yeah. When we were at Scares That Care, I was just convinced that we were going to sell mostly our horror books, and he had his hardbacks lined up on the table, and those covers are so gorgeous that that's what everybody was drawn to. Like,
they literally are ethereal, and then it goes along with the whole thing to begin with. They are very beautiful. I'm not surprised people are eating those up.
Yeah. Good. If you want to know who my favorite modern fantasy author is over here, off camera. I'm trying to think. What else is something really, really good? I feel like I need to look at my Goodreads or something. Like, what?
I love how I ask people this question, but if people ask me, I'm like, I have no clue.
The thing is, I've read so many books in my life that sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I've read that, but I don't really remember it. And then somebody will start talking about what it actually is, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally remember that.
It just depends on my mood what my favorite book of the year was, you know?
Is very true as well. I read not horror, but also fantasy, Susan Roddy's book In Spades, which is the beginning of her like Alice in Wonderland.
Ooh.
Based trilogy, but it's like Alice's great niece or something has to go back and save Wonderland, and it's definitely spicy. It's a bit of a reverse harem kind of things going on at times.
Oh.
That's not the main point of the book. It's Alice is coming back to reclaim Wonderland. But that's a really good
I will have to check that one out too. I love stuff like that. I'm such a twisted fairy tale, historical fiction. Like, make it twisted and make it weird, and I will read it.
Also, if you want good thrillers that kind of tend to fly under the radar, please read Wesley Smith's thrillers. He has one that he did with Wicked House called Some Kind of Truth, and then he's done In the Pale Light and They Came at Night with Us, Water Tower Hill, and that guy, he writes thrillers so well. Oh my god, like you think you know what's happening and then you don't. So I definitely would recommend those.
Okay, I'm sold. I will definitely have to go check those out because I love thrillers. I've read them for a bazillion years, but I feel like I already know what's going to happen, you know, like the first chunk of it. And I'll continue to read for a good story, but like I want to be tricked.
Yeah. I love a good
Signed up for that.
Yep. Also, not in the last year, but if you want a horror book with a twist you will never see coming, read The 10th Girl by Sarah.
You cut out on that one. What was the name of that?
The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. Sarah, just S-A-R-A, Sarah Faring. It is, oh my gosh. I got to the point where I realized what was going on in like the last, 50 pages of the book. Holy crap. I didn't know that was going on at all. And it's very rare for a book to do that to me. And I just, like, I read it years ago and I still to this day, I'm like, best twist ever.
Okay, definitely. I will literally go look for that after we get done with this today. Okay, let's see. I think I've asked you everything I wanted to ask. Is there anything you want to talk about or tell us about that I haven't asked about?
I don't think so, unless you want to, you want me to plug some books.
Ooh, yes.
Ask me about inspiration. Grandma Nan is huge inspiration in my life. The tales my grandmother told me is actually stories she told us growing up, kind of made into adult versions and a little more intense in this book. So
I loved it.
This is my homage to her. She was the most fantastic woman. And then I had Echo of the Dead, which is all psychological grief. And I don't know how many times I've had people say, "Oh, your book made me cry," and I'm like, that wasn't my intention really when I wrote it, but
Thank you.
Josh is handing me books. Here's Susan's in spades if you want to see what it looks like. It's
That cover's
fantastic. Susan did the cover for her own book. Got cool art inside. So, and here's Wesley Smith's books.
Ooh, yes, those.
I don't think you can see it very well on here, but there's like a shadow of a guy with a knife on here, but that you
That is creepy.
can't see it on the. It's not all black, I promise. Now, see, Josh would hand me his books to show you, but he keeps giving them away to people, and we never have copies of his book. He actually just reordered the whole set, so we're supposed to get them this week. And I'm like, I'm gonna write in them, like sign, like put your name or something
Put
in
in the front of it. If Josh gives you this book, hand it back to him.
Give it back, or his wife will murder him.
This book has a tracker in it, but no.
Right.
That's so funny. But thank you so much for being here and talking to me, and of course showing us all your books. I absolutely love kind of picking you guys' brains, seeing what's going on in there, and finding out what it's about. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad we were both finally well enough to do this, because we've been sick for like the last month.
I feel like everybody has been. Did we just all have a big group sickness?
I guess so. We just like books or something. I don't know, but yeah, you and I.
That's next horror book.
I think this is like the fourth rescheduling we've had to do to finally get this done, because I was sick or you were sick or we were both sick. It's been hot months. Yes,
but we finally
got it done.
The hard part is done. The rest of it's just up to me now.
That's good, because I got other work to do.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this.